Hey, 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 welcome to On the Fringe. This is our part two with me, Gavin, and my good friend Dave.
Hey everybody.
And today we're having the second part of our conversation on Afghanistan and the aftermath of the terrible earthquake that occurred not that long ago. So, Dave, we have differing
Hmm.
opinions on them.
We do.
We do. So, the sort of sticking point in all of this is natural disaster has occurred. The de facto government of Afghanistan, the Islamic Emirate, also known as the Taliban, are going to be the people in charge of dispersing the aid. And
Hmm.
they are not, as we've discussed on this podcast many times, they're not good faith actors. They will, at best, selectively distribute the aid, if not actively charge people for it. So this presents somewhat of a policy conundrum, as we discussed on the previous podcast. This is not a policy conundrum that the U.S. is involved in because the U.S. is not involved in foreign aid, really, at this point. But if we were, me and Dave have a little disagreement about how best we should go forward given the situation. Dave, do you want to go and tell the people how you feel?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we're making the right move. We should not give the Taliban a single dime. And giving them anything will further enable them. They've already been enabled by the US leaving back in 2021. And we've just seen recently with how they've played the Chinese that these guys don't keep an agreement with anybody. They don't care. If they make an agreement, they do business with the barrel of a gun rather than a pen. And we would be crazy to donate any sort of aid to Afghanistan or to the Taliban because it's going to go straight into their hands and it's going to not go to the people that need it. Multilateral aid, I think as well. The US should not give anything because the Taliban has rolled back all of their campaigns that the US and the former Afghan government had set up. They've shut down schools for women. They have made life hard for most Afghanis over there. And quite frankly, they do not care about the people that have been affected by this earthquake. They're not going to get anything. If you have a government, Taliban government, the Ministry of the Interior, Sirajuddin Haqqani, who is in charge of the Ministry of Interior, well, he is not going to let the aid go to anybody that is not part of his network. We're going to be talking about them in a little bit, but I think it's a stupid idea to give any sort of money to Afghanistan because it's not going to go anywhere. That was long winded. Gavin, what do you think?
I agree with about 75% of what you say. I agree with the sort of historical background. I agree that ultimately you are giving money to very bad people. There's just no way around it. You're giving money to really terrible people who will use the aid distribution to hurt individuals and communities. 100% that is going to happen. The problem is if you sit back and you do nothing and you send nothing, more people are going to die than if you give even $40,000 will probably save some people's lives.
Hmm.
Um, and that's the amount the Chinese government's giving, by the way.
Yeah, they
So,
factor that in probably to where they can say we've
oh,
saved X amount of lives.
but you know what? I do believe in the utility of saving lives. And I do believe that there are certain moral absolutes. And this is a situation where there is no good outcome. If you do not give money, people will die. If you give money, people will die.
Hmm.
Hopefully, fewer people will die. And that is, I think it's a very shitty scenario. I think it's the best case scenario. You have to completely limit what you give. But I do think this is why Jimmy Carter was only there one term. This is this is a situation where you have to think about it in moral absolute terms and go, yes, strategically, we shouldn't give them anything, shouldn't give them thumbtacks. On a moral level, if I was able to distribute aid and I was told, okay, 10% of it is actually going to get to the people who need it,
Hmm.
I'd still give money because that could save
Right.
someone's life.
But you could, but then what's going to happen down the road when these guys have more control of civil society over there, when they have control of the whole entire potential food supply for the next six
But
months to a year,
but
if they
Dave, they're already.
they are.
They're they're
But
pretty
what
much
if
there
they
already.
It's just another cap in their feather, I guess, so to speak, of we have more control over this country in one more way. And I think
Yeah.
as well, this is a complete disservice to the 13 American servicemen and women at Abbey Gate who were killed when we were trying to leave the country back in 2021. We should not do a single deal with the Taliban. We
Well,
should not do a
we
deal
did.
with
We
anybody who's
did.
related to the Haqqani network as well. It's technically
Yeah.
illegal to do so because they're a terrorist group. But
Well, I mean, and again,
we
this is all supposition because we're not. I mean, and at the end of the day, there is going to be no negotiation. There's going to be no transfer of aid. I
mhm.
mean, look, dealing with these guys is a disservice to everyone in the country, first and foremost. Um, but they're the people who are there. And we're going to talk about what's going to happen next. You have,
And
I think,
this is the main reason why I think you do not want to give aid to
yeah.
Afghanistan right now. You do not want to
Okay,
give
so
aid because of what's about to happen. And
lay it
you
out
were
first, Dave.
well, okay. I think if we give aid or if aid is given to this region of Afghanistan, the earthquake hit in the eastern part of Afghanistan, where
Mhm.
The Haqqani network is a terrorist group. I what would be a way to explain it? Like they're the local mafia where they have full control over every aspect of the economy, and they're very, very good at getting money and getting funding from outside of Afghanistan and getting money into Afghanistan from outside businesses. These guys aren't poor. These guys have hundreds of millions of dollars in their reserves. They have the capabilities to provide recovery funds or to purchase food for the areas that were hit. And I think us giving money to these people, we're helping the Haqqani network for one, because they're going to get more stuff.
Hmm.
And second, we are going to enable them where they're going to have a stronger stranglehold. They're going to have a stranglehold over the local area because they will be in control of who is actually getting this aid.
But again, I disagree because
Because,
they're already in control. I mean, the only thing that's going to change is the volume of stuff going in or out. But they already, and particularly the Haqqani network, as you just mentioned correctly, they're basically they're the Sicilian mafia on steroids. I mean, they grew up in this incredibly chaotic, violent environment along the Afghan-Pakistan border. As you noted earlier, Haqqani himself is the Minister of the Interior, which is ridiculous. It's like making one of the heads of the five families the Secretary of State. He's already just centralized power in a somewhat ridiculous way. He has very strong ties on both sides of the border. I think one of the main reasons he's in the position he is because he still has pretty good ties with actors in the Pakistani military establishment, which,
yes,
as
especially with the ISI.
particularly with the ISI, which a lot of people currently in the Afghan government don't. There has very much been a fracture or definitely a small split between the two countries, which seems to be healing somewhat, but they kind of need him in the tent, pissing out, because otherwise it would just have sort of insurmountable problems. Yeah, he has the money. Maybe not immediately available, but certainly it's around. Some of it may be distributed. I would imagine most of it won't be. And again, the major concern that you brought up correctly is this is going to be used as a weapon. These are people who think militarily. Everything is a battle. The battle for Afghanistan, as far as the gentlemen in Kabul are concerned, is ongoing. And this is one more weapon. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think, unfortunately, again, this guy is in charge of the Ministry of the Interior. How the, how the hell do you get around uh, directly aiding this individual? And it goes back to what you said, you can't.
Yeah, it goes back to what I said. You shouldn't give any aid because this guy is going to be in control of where that goes, and you're going to
Hmm.
further enable this guy to take power in Afghanistan.
Hmm.
And could be potentially 2 years, 5 years, who knows? He could get blown up tomorrow. Not likely at all. But do you want this guy then to become a potential head of state? Because
I
I think
mean,
that's what he is. That's what he is probably going for. Would be my guess. He's going to be, in his eyes, the head of Afghanistan. I'm probably not even going to call it Afghanistan. The Caliphate of whatever it is, Afghanistan potentially. I don't know what he would call it, but he wants to be in charge of the whole entire area, probably
hmm.
in Pakistan as well. This guy takes over in that region. Now, what do you have? You're going to have more terrorist camps. You're going to have more people planning out suicide attacks. And you have networks around the world that can get money to this guy. And if these guys have money coming in from around the world, they're going to be able to create and develop attacks. And they're going to have access to technology where they can use these attacks. And this is something we haven't really talked about, but it wouldn't shock me if these guys were not trying to use AI to help them figure out loopholes and weaknesses where they could potentially plot something.
Just to go back to something you raised, though. You're talking about camps and groups. One of the things to point out in all of this is, and I think we've been good about mentioning this. Afghanistan is not a monolith, and the Taliban control is not actually absolute. Um, there are groups, IS being the most obvious, but there are others as well, that have established themselves in the country that have well, IS just has a straightforwardly hostile relationship with the Taliban, but they're groups that have an ambiguous relationship with them where you have territories that are nominally under Taliban control, but they're not being administered by them. And one of the things, kind of the opposite of what you said, Dave, but I think it's
Mm-hmm.
a possibility too, is instead of strengthening Taliban control over the entire country, it might strengthen it over the eastern part of the country, but weaken it across the rest.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if that happens, and we've discussed this before, I think one of the interesting things that again has not been talked about very much is in the last 6, 8 months, there have been massive pushbacks of people of Afghan origin living in Pakistan and Iran, actually both. And people have been pushed into Afghanistan. A lot of these people have never been to Afghanistan. They're second or third generation refugees who are living in either country. There are still millions of Afghans living in Iran, living in Pakistan. These people have been expelled, they've been deported. Many of them, particularly coming from Iran, are Shia and therefore are going to have a very, very rough time under the Taliban, who are, of course, Sunni extremists. Or, I mean, extremists is maybe polite. Some of the people getting pushed out of Iran, I wouldn't be surprised, would be people who may have served in Syria in the dying days of the Assad regime, not lamented. The majority of Iranian paramilitaries in Syria were actually Afghans. They were Afghan refugees or people of Afghan descent who were paid not a particularly high wage, basically trained by the Revolutionary Guard and brought over to Syria to quote unquote defend the shrines. We don't know what happened to those people. We think a lot of them got into Iran, got back into Iran after the fall of the Assad regime. And it seems that some of them probably have been expelled back into Afghanistan. These are people who have been completely dispossessed, have nothing left to lose, may be armed, and have significant military training and experience. I would not be surprised if there was some armed revolt in the Hazara regions of central Afghanistan. Instability is about to go out of control. And I think, yes, there are dangers with aid distribution, but again, I don't think they're going to get very much. And I do think that instead of a tightening, there may be a tightening long term of Taliban rule, but in the short term, there is going to be a flare up of local violence as people try to assert their autonomy. But that's my
Hmm.
tin hat moment.
No, I look at that and I go, yeah, that's a very sound analysis, and I would agree too that you have an event like an earthquake that kills thousands of people. Everyone is going to be jumping in there and saying, "I'm taking power. This is
Yeah.
my chance to rise up above everybody else." But in the longer term, you look at this, someone is going to come out on top of this.
Mm.
And the person most likely to come out on top is Hakani.
And sadly, I think I have to agree.
So,
On that happy
kind of
note,
a somber.
jeez. On that happy note, thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this analysis, joy is not the right word. If you've appreciated this analysis, please like, comment, subscribe, share, and but please write to us. We'd like a nice email. We'd like a nice comment. Tell us how we're doing. And we appreciate our On the Fringe community. From Gavin and Dave, thank you very much.
Take care and all the best.